You know, there's a specific kind of tired that a double shot of espresso just doesn't fix. It isn't physical exhaustion exactly. I mean, you can sleep for 10 hours and still wake up with it. It's more structural.
Structural. That is a heavy way to start things off.
Well, think about it, right? You wake up, the alarm goes off.
Yeah.
You do the commute, you answer the emails, you put out the fires, you go home, you make dinner, you sleep. And then
The alarm goes off again.
the alarm goes off again. It's the Groundhog Day effect. And if you stop moving for just a second, maybe you're sitting in traffic, or waiting for the kettle to boil, you get hit with this sinking suspicion that maybe you're just running on a treadmill.
I think you're describing the universal human condition there. The feeling that we are incredibly busy, constantly in motion, but not necessarily going anywhere.
Exactly. And usually when we feel that kind of burnout, we turn to, I don't know, productivity hacks.
Yeah.
We buy a new planner, or we book a vacation to reset.
Right, a quick fix.
But today, we're doing something a little different. We are looking at a stack of source material that is thousands of years old. We're doing a deep dive into a curated collection of biblical texts that address time, aging, and this exact crisis of purpose.
And what's so striking about this collection is that it doesn't start with a solution. It actually starts by agreeing with you. It validates that feeling of the grind in a way that is, honestly, darker and more blunt than most modern philosophy.
It really is. I was reading through the first source, and it felt like reading the diary of someone who is just completely over it. So the mission today is to trace the argument these texts make, starting with the brutal reality of the daily grind, and then seeing how they pivot to a solution that involves a massive shift in perspective, a shift about time itself.
It's the shift from the temporary to the eternal, but like you said, we have to start with the problem.
So let's just get right into the heavy stuff. The source material opens with the book of Ecclesiastes. And I have to say, for a religious text, this reads like a full-blown existential crisis.
Oh, it is an existential crisis. It was written by Solomon. And the context here is just so crucial. Solomon wasn't some hermit living in a cave.
Right.
He was a king who had everything. Unlimited wealth, absolute power, immense wisdom. He had completely maxed out the human experience. And his conclusion wasn't, life is great.
No, his conclusion was meaningless. Meaningless. Everything is meaningless.
And we need to pause on that word meaningless. In the original Hebrew, the word he uses is hevel.
Hevel.
It's really important to understand this concept because meaningless makes it sound like, a math equation that just equals zero. But hevel literally means vapor or smoke.
Smoke. Wow. That's a much more powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
You can see it, it can sting your eyes, it can obscure your vision, but you can't grasp it. You try to close your hand around it, and it just slips through your fingers.
Exactly. And that is Solomon's diagnosis of life under the sun. That's the key phrase in the whole text, under the sun. He is looking at life in a closed system, purely the physical world, observing what happens here on Earth without factoring in any divine connection. And in that closed system, he observes that nature is just a series of monotonous loops.
The loops are terrifying if you think about them for too long. He talks about the sun rising and setting, hurrying back to where it started just to do it all over again. The wind blows south, it turns north, round and round. It never actually gets anywhere.
It's that treadmill again.
And the streams. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. It's this picture of maximum effort with zero progress. And he applies that directly to us. We work, we build, we stress, and then we die. Then the next generation takes our place and does the exact same thing.
He actually says there is nothing new under the sun, which feels like a direct attack on our modern obsession with progress.
Oh, right.
We think we're advancing because we have better technology or faster cars, but Solomon would argue the human condition hasn't budged an inch. We are still born, we still toil, we still desire, and we still die.
It's so interesting because usually you expect the Bible to be, cheery, you're special, you're loved. But this starts by saying you're a cog in a machine that's been running for eons and you're going to be forgotten. It's brutal.
But it's necessary, right? If the text didn't acknowledge how draining life feels, how hevel it is, we wouldn't trust the solution it offers later. It has to start with the honest bad news.
So if chapter 1 is the bad news, the monotonous cycle, then the source material suggests chapter 3 is the first pivot. It sort of reframes the cycle as seasons.
This is a famous passage, one you might have heard even outside of religious contexts. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under
A
heaven.
time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance.
Notice the difference in tone there. In chapter 1, the repetition is oppressive. It's just round and round.
Hmm.
In chapter 3, the repetition is purposeful. It's appointed. It suggests that the shifting circumstances of your life aren't just random chaos. They're distinct movements in a composition.
That makes me think of music. If you just hit random keys on a piano forever, it's just noise. It's monotonous.
Yeah.
But if you organize those notes into movements, sad parts, happy parts, fast, slow, it becomes a symphony.
That is the argument. But even with seasons, we still have that underlying frustration. We still feel like time is slipping away and we can't hold on to the good moments. And the text actually addresses why we feel that tension.
Okay.
It says, He has set eternity in the hearts of men.
Eternity in our hearts. This feels like the hinge point of the entire argument. What does that actually imply?
It implies a mismatch, a design flaw, or maybe a design clue. We are living in a temporary world, a world of vapor, but we are wired forever.
So if we were just biological machines, just sophisticated animals,
Yeah.
the cycle wouldn't bother us.
Precisely. A dog doesn't sit on the porch having an anxiety attack because its life is short. It doesn't worry about its legacy. It just lives. The fact that we are troubled by time, the fact that we grieve when things end, the fact that we try to build things that last, it proves that we don't belong entirely to the now.
It's like being thirsty in a desert. The thirst tells you that water must exist somewhere, even if you can't see it right now.
Exactly.
Our frustration with the temporary is proof that the eternal exists.
At realizing that doesn't stop the clock. And the source material is very clear that biologically we are losing the battle. It brings in other authors, Moses in the Psalms, James in the New Testament, to drive home just how short life is.
Brevity is a polite way to put it. Psalm 90 compares us to grass. In the morning, it springs up new. By evening, it's dry and withered. That's not exactly a confidence booster.
And James chapter 4 calls life a mist. You know, when you see your breath on a cold morning, it's there for a second and then it's gone.
That's it.
That is your entire lifespan on the scale of history.
That's humbling. And honestly, it stands in pretty stark contrast to our culture. We are obsessed with extending the timeline. Biohacking, anti-aging creams, trying to look 25 when you're 50. We view aging as a failure. If you look old, it means you're losing.
We view it as a tragedy. But the source material flips that narrative completely. It views aging not as a loss of value, but as an accumulation of it.
There's that verse from Proverbs that stood out to me. Gray hair is a crown of splendor.
A crown. I mean, think about that imagery. In the ancient world, you didn't get to be old by accident. There were no antibiotics, no modern safety standards. If you had gray hair, it meant you had survived. You had navigated the wars, the famines, the sicknesses. It was a badge of honor.
And Job says, wisdom is found among the aged. So the trade-off is physical strength for spiritual or intellectual weight. You lose the muscle, but you gain the insight.
But there is a catch. The crown isn't automatic. You don't just get it for surviving. The source highlights what we could call the chain of wisdom. It's not enough to just get old. You have a job to do.
This is the part about passing the baton.
Yes. Psalm 78 commands the older generation to tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. And then Titus in the New Testament gives specific instructions for older men and women to mentor the younger ones.
So if you're feeling useless because you retired or your body is slowing down, the text is saying your purpose hasn't ended. It's just changed. Your purpose is now transfer.
Correct. And that solves the vapor problem from earlier. If I live for myself and I die, my experience evaporates. But if I pour my wisdom into you and you pour it into your children, then my life echoes. It breaks the closed loop. It turns the vapor into a solid foundation for someone else.
Okay, so we've reframed the grind as seasons, and we've reframed aging as a mentorship role. But the source material eventually makes a much harder pivot. It basically says, look, managing your perspective on Earth is good, but the ultimate solution is that this life is not the main event.
And this is where we move from the philosophical to the theological. The Christian worldview presented here argues that the only way to truly solve the problem of death and time is to defeat them.
Which starts with this concept of citizenship.
Wow.
One of the sources says, our citizenship is in heaven.
Which makes us pilgrims or exiles here.
I really like the expat analogy for this. If you're an American living in a temporary hotel in a foreign country for a work trip, you don't stress if the wallpaper is ugly. You don't invest your life savings in renovating the hotel room. You know you're going home eventually.
Precisely. If you believe this world is your only home, then every disappointment is a catastrophe. Every wrinkle is a tragedy because it signals the end. But if you are a citizen of another place, you hold this life loosely. You can enjoy it, sure, but you don't need it to be perfect to be happy.
But the text gets very specific about how this trip ends. And it's not just fading to black. There's some very dramatic imagery here about the physical transformation of the body.
You're looking at 1 Corinthians and 1 Thessalonians. This is the promise of the rapture and the resurrection.
It talks about the perishable clothing itself with the imperishable. Sounds like a metamorphosis.
And the tone there is so defiant. It's mocking death. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? It's saying that death, which looks like the end of the story to us under the sun, is actually just a doorway.
And what's on the other side? Because I think a lot of people have this vague idea of floating on clouds playing harps, which frankly sounds almost as boring as the treadmill.
That is a common misconception. The source material, specifically in Revelation, doesn't describe an ethereal, ghostly existence. It describes a new heaven and a new earth.
A new earth, so
Physical.
physical but restored. The text says the old order of things has passed away. That old order, the decay, the entropy, the weariness that Solomon complained about, is gone.
He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain.
That is the answer to the grind. The cycle is finally broken. It's the fulfillment of that eternity we have set in our hearts. We finally fit the world we live in.
That is a beautiful picture. It really is. But I have to play the realist advocate here for a second.
Go for it. That's the someday. That's the sweet by and by. But I still have to get through Tuesday. I still have bills. I have difficult coworkers. I have traffic. Even if I know there's a new earth coming, how does that help me when I'm stuck in a meeting that should have been an email?
That is the tension of the now and the not yet. And the source material actually anticipates this. It asks effectively, how do we live in the mist?
It starts with a paradox in 2 Corinthians. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day.
This is critical. It admits the reality. Your body is breaking down. You are getting tired. There is no toxic positivity here, denying the pain. But it claims that there is an inner man, your spirit, your character, that can actually gain strength while the outer man fails.
There's that eagle metaphor from Isaiah. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary.
Run and not grow weary. I mean, that is the superpower we are all looking for.
But how do we access it? Because it's easy to say hope in the Lord, but what does that look like at 8 a.m.? The source provides a toolkit. It's not just think happy thoughts, it lists specific habits. Let's run through these because I think they are the practical bridge between the theology and the daily grind.
The first one is prayer, but we need to define it correctly based on the source.
Right, it's not just a wish list you read off before bed.
No. One of the sources says pray continually. It's describing an open line of communication. And Philippians frames prayer as the antidote to anxiety. The psychological mechanism here is offloading. You are taking the weight of the grind, the worry, the need for control, and handing it over to God in real time.
So instead of carrying the backpack all day, you set it down.
Exactly. The second tool is worship.
Right, sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Now, to a skeptic, this might sound like just a distraction technique. Sing a song and you'll forget you're sad.
It's more than distraction, it's realignment. Music has this unique ability to bypass the cynical intellect. You can argue yourself out of hope using logic, but it's much harder to do that when you're singing. It shifts your focus from the problem to the provider. It resets your emotional baseline.
Okay, so prayer connects us. Worship resets us. The third tool is community.
Hebrews chapter 10. Let us not give up meeting together, but let us encourage one another.
This is so crucial because the grind isolates us. When you're burned out, your instinct is to withdraw. You just want to go home, shut the blinds, and not talk to anyone.
Which is the most dangerous thing you can do. When you are alone, the echo chamber of your own mind just amplifies the negativity. The text says we need to spur one another on. We need external voices, friends, mentors, a community to remind us of the truth when we forget it.
It's guardrails. We need people to keep us on the road.
Yes, and the next tool is love. Specifically, the type of love described in 1 Corinthians, patience, kindness, keeping no record of wrongs.
Now, how does being patient help me with burnout, though? It feels like that helps the other person. If I'm patient with an annoying colleague, they benefit, but I'm still annoyed, right?
Not necessarily. Think about what causes the most friction in your day. It's usually people. Frustration with a boss, resentment toward a spouse, anger at a driver. That friction creates heat, and that heat burns you out.
That's a really good point. Resentment is exhausting.
If you apply patience and kindness, you are essentially lubricating the gears of your life. You are removing the friction. And more importantly, you aren't just processing transactions, you are engaging in something eternal. You are loving a person who, according to this text, is going to exist forever.
It turns a nuisance into a neighbor. That definitely changes the dynamic.
Exactly. And the final tool in the kit is perseverance. The source uses the imagery of a race.
Hebrews chapter 12. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us.
And it says we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses.
I love that image. It's like being in a stadium. The people who have gone before us, the ones who finished their race, the ones who kept the faith, they are in the stands. They aren't just watching, they're cheering.
And the instruction is to fix our eyes on Jesus. This is about focus. If you look at your feet, at your current problems, you see the pain, you see the blisters. If you look at the finish line, you find the endurance to keep running.
So let's pull this all together. We've covered a lot of ground. We started with Solomon in Ecclesiastes, staring at the sun, just depressed by the meaningless repetition.
We realize that the repetition is actually a season, and our frustration with it is proof that we are built for eternity.
We saw that aging is not a tragedy to be avoided, but a crown of wisdom to be passed down.
And we looked at the ultimate hope, the new earth, that gives us the context to endure the current one.
And finally, we have the toolkit prayer. Community love to keep that inner man renewed, even when the alarm goes off on Wednesday morning.
It is a complete reframing of existence. It acknowledges the dark reality of the human condition, the smoke, but answers it with a blindingly bright hope.
The source ends with a final encouragement from 1 Corinthians. It simply says, "Your labor in the Lord is not in vain."
That is the direct answer to Ecclesiastes. Solomon asked, what do people gain from all their toils? The answer, ultimately, is that if your labor is connected to the eternal through love, through faith, through purpose, it is never wasted. It lasts.
That changes the spreadsheet. It really does. It means the small things matter.
It changes everything.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with as we wrap up this deep dive. The text says eternity is set in your heart, if that is true. If you are actually an eternal being just passing through time, how does that change the way you view the mundane, repetitive tasks you have to do tomorrow? If the person you're talking to lasts forever and the character you're building lasts forever, then maybe, just maybe, there is no such thing as a meaningless moment.
Something to think about in the mist.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next deep dive.